As part of the Erie County Young Dems, I serve as the social media coordinator. I also served for a small amount of time as the vice president in an interim role as people came in and out of the group. Um, Currently, that's my current role there, social media coordinator.
Okay. And what is the main goal of the Erie County Young Democrats?
So the main goal of the Erie County Young Democrats is to provide a voice for young people in the political process. The Erie County Young Dems is part of the larger Pennsylvania Democratic Party, the Erie County, Pennsylvania Democratic Party. And we just like to provide a space for young people to come and share their ideas and what they feel is important to them as a voter. Sometimes those ideas aren't always shared by older or more experienced politicians or voters. So we feel it's important to give those younger people a platform where they can speak their minds and have a voice to the larger group.
Okay. But like, since they have a larger group,
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, why is it necessary to have this group?
We feel it's necessary to have a separate group because it's always, I should say, it's not always younger. Sorry, the what's the word I'm trying to think of? Sorry, give me a second.
It's okay. We can cut it out. In
Yeah,
post.
that's fine. um, Sorry, there we go. Okay, so a lot of times the issues for younger voters aren't always the same or don't always carry the same importance to the major, to more of the larger group. So things that revolve around education, a lot of things that are important to younger voters sometimes get overlooked. And younger voters themselves often get overlooked. They may not be seen as people who maybe aren't as experienced or they don't know their way around the political process and are sometimes just cast aside. Where we feel like, younger voters do have an important say in things. Obviously, they are going to become the future of the party. So in time, they are going to be the leaders. So it's important that they feel welcome into that political process sooner. And the sooner we get them involved, the better off they'll be as they, as we grow up and, find our way through the party.
Okay, makes sense. What is the process of deciding on your primary issues?
So the group itself will hold not elections, but we do have general meetings, and in those meetings we start to decide. We take sort of a poll of people who are involved, and we start to build a sort of a platform. It's not an official platform, but we just kind of get sort of the general feel of what people our issues are important to them, and we try to put those things together and really get to the root of some of those issues. Sometimes they can be around whether they're social issues, education issues, any of those things that people voice an opinion about. We try to be open and accepting of, making sure that we feel that we're including everybody's um, opinions on those issues, and that generally tends to inform, what we decide to speak on and to talk about.
How do you narrow down the big issues to an Erie focus?
Um, so it's difficult sometimes because some of the larger national issues may not affect Erie the same way they do. And let's say if Erie's a smaller town, if there's an issue that affects, large cities more than they do small towns, it's hard to, it's hard to make those two things match. But we find that a lot of things are sort of universal, right? So access to education, that's something that's important all over the country. Whether it's, student debt in college or public education starting from, K through 12, all of those things are important no matter where you are. Things like healthcare, whether it's universal healthcare or any other ways that healthcare can be given to people. Those things are universal, and they can still be brought down to a local level. We can still affect change on our local school boards and our local city councils, to make sure that we're sort of pushing those ideas in the direction we feel that they should go.
Are you associated with the Pennsylvania Young Democrats?
Yes. So part of our group, since it is still fairly young, um, I don't believe we're actually an official charter of the Pennsylvania Young Dems yet. That's part of the process that we're still going through. But we have had contact with them. They know that we exist. We've had representatives come to our meetings. We've had representatives speak to us through like video chats during our meetings. So we are very close with them, and we have set up our group and our bylaws based on those recommendations set up by the state.
Okay. How do you take their platform issues and translate it to the issues that Erie faces?
So a lot of times those issues are the same, right? So what the Young Dems are seeing across Pennsylvania, we're seeing the same thing in Erie. So a lot of times, we are kind of in line with them. We don't have to take their platform word for word. We don't have to believe everything. We don't have to take everything that they say. If something works for Erie, then that's what we'll do, and for Erie County, then that's what we'll do. But if it doesn't, and maybe it's an issue that really we're not seeing here, obviously, we have from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, some of those issues might be more important there than they are here. And so our focus is Erie County and the young people who live in this, who live in our area, our district. And whatever issues are important here, those are the ones that we'll focus on.
Can you give an example of something that might be not important? It's important, but
right.
It's more important here than it's.
I don't know if I would have a specific example.
That's okay. Alrighty. How do you bring more young voices into local Erie politics?
I think the best way to bring young people into politics in Erie is, for one, to try to reach them where they are. So the reason why we have a social media coordinator as a position is because obviously social media is a place where young people are.
Yeah.
And if that's our target audience, then that's probably where we should be. And so for one, is the way to reach out to them is find them where they are and to try to relate their life to politics. And a lot of times young people won't think that politics in general is important to them. They see it as just like this far off thing that, we go to vote and then it's over, and that's the end of the political process. But if we can point out to them all the ways that politics really is involved in their life, from, education through, taxes and jobs and healthcare and all of the ways that their lives are affected by politics, even though they may not know it, especially for younger voters, because we're talking down to 18-year-old voters, who are going to vote for the first time. They may not understand how much the political process affects their life and the life of their parents and the life of their families, and how it's going to affect them as they grow up. And so if we can kind of point those things out to them, I think that's the best way to reach them and to make them see that it's worth getting involved in.
what about voices like of people of color? Um, how do you how do you bring
Hmm.
how do we bring more?
Again, I think the best way for us to do that is to really showcase, I think, being part of the Democratic Party and inviting people of color in is,
Mm,
it's very easy because our I believe our party is sort of the best at dealing with issues that are very important to them. So social justice issues, um, dealing with immigration reform, um, uh, e- education, especially when you're talking about underserved, underprivileged communities. That's where the fight really is for the Democratic Party and supporting people there in those communities. So it's kind of easy for us because we can say, a lot of what we believe in is already, things that they're going to find important to them. And hopefully they can see that. And we just try to be as open and welcoming to any people who want to participate in the party, no matter what color, whether you know, uh, gender, LGBT, anybody who wants to participate in the process, we welcome them, and we welcome their ideas and their concerns.
okay. What's your biggest challenges you have face to face going forward?
So right now, the biggest challenge I think for us is going to be getting people out to vote. That's always been really the biggest challenge. We find when we have a very high turnout, um, that the Democratic Party does well, and when the Democratic Party doesn't do well, it's usually because of low voter turnout. So really, our real job is to get people not only to just go out and vote, but to be excited about it, because if they're excited about voting, then they're going to tell their friends, they're going to tell their family members. They're going to put signs out in their yard. They're going to wear the t-shirts. They're going to wear the buttons. They're going to show up to the campaigns, the rallies. They're going to make phone calls, and that's how you really win an election. Is when people are excited, when people are passionate, and they really go out there and try to make a change. And the change happens at the voting booth,
Mm,
but the excitement behind it and the passion behind it is what really gets people out and motivated to vote.
true. Um, how do you keep the group together with there being changes in members
so
constantly?
so the change in membership for our group has been difficult. So again, our group is only a few years old, and during that time, people are still finding out, um, you know, their place in the group.
Can you
Whether
state how many years?
so, I think the group has been around for 3 years now,
Okay.
and it's just one of those things where people are trying to figure out, you know, what what role they can take on and how they make being part of the Young Dems
Mm,
fit into all of the other things that they're part of. So thankfully for us, we have um, members who are very involved in the community, and not only just with the Young Dems, but in other organizations. Um, but on the flip side, that means that they're splitting their time between those organizations,
yeah.
and sometimes those priorities take over, and they have to take a step back, or they may not be willing to go into a role because they know they can't dedicate as much time and energy to it that it needs to. So yeah, it has been difficult, and especially now going through a pandemic and we can't actually meet face to face and invite new people into the group. It's definitely been challenging.
Yeah. How have you worked on keeping a united front given the challenges that COVID imposes?
Um, so the best thing we've been able to do right now is to continue our general meetings, but we've had them online. Um, that does work, I think, to our advantage because not everybody is available all the time or every day, and they can't always make it down to the meeting, or they're kind of doing several things at once. But if it's online and they're in the comfort of their own home, they might be more willing to come on and be able to share their ideas and opinions, where other times they may have not been able to attend those meetings. I also think it allows a certain level of comfort for people who have never been to one of our meetings. Right. So they may not feel like, they want to come down, because our meetings are normally held at the Democratic headquarters. So they may not be comfortable coming down and sort of, being around a group of people, and they may, it may take a while for them to, feel comfortable to come in and share their opinions. But I think if you're online in an online setting, at least you can come in, you can listen. You don't necessarily have to, have all the eyeballs, as you walk in the door, you're to a new place, all of a sudden everybody's looking at you. So sometimes it does make it a little more comfortable for people. But that's the best that we've been able to do through the pandemic. Hopefully we'll be back to meeting in person, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
What is the purpose of pushing mail-in votes?
So, mail-in voting is just part of the larger process of just having more access to voting. So again, the way, the voting is just part of, your right as a citizen. And the more difficult we make it for people to vote, the more difficult it is for us to really get a sense of, how people feel. If only a certain type of voter has easy access to voting, then we didn't really get a good idea of, the majority of the country. Erie is known to have a very low voter turnout, and for whatever reason it might be, but when you're set up to just vote on one day during a specific time, it can be difficult. It can come down to the weather. It can come down to whether, people are homesick, or maybe you couldn't get off of work, or you couldn't have anybody watch the kids for, whatever. There's just a whole host of reasons why you could have not been able to vote on that one day. And the mail-in option really just opens it up for people to say they can just do it when they have the time, when it's convenient for them. All they have to do is, make their vote, drop it in the mail, and they're done, So it really just goes back to everybody having access. And the more access we give to the more people, that just makes it better in general.
True. How does it affect the different parties then?
So I think it affects both parties in a lot of ways. So if you're talking about rural voters, those typical rural American voters tend to vote Republican, and so if you're a rural voter and you have to drive a distance, to go to your one polling place, that might dissuade a lot of people, especially if they're older and they don't really have a way to get around and they don't have a ride to their polling place, or, whatever the case may be. So I think that's, there are people who are losing their vote that way. And then also when it comes down to, larger urban areas, you're talking about losing, or you're having to have a large number of polling places to deal with a larger population. And if you don't have that, then you have people waiting in long lines. There's reports of people waiting hours to vote, which if you had to do, a lot of people, say, well, I'm not going to stand here for hours if I don't have to, or he say, hey, I need to be at work, or my babysitter's only going to be here for an hour, or, whatever the case may be. So, I think it definitely affects both parties, and and the whole point is no matter.
And like as you said, both parties, whichever you vote for, everybody should have easy access.
Right. That's really the whole point is creating the easiest path for you to be able to cast your vote, no matter what party it's for.
That's really good. As we know, the traditional campaigning is practically over. What are some new steps that are put in place to adjust to the current situation?
So yeah, so now I think going back to the whole social media aspect in the current climate, you're not going to have that in-person uh, meetings with people. You're not going to be able to go out on the campaign trail and shake hands and do all the things that you've always been able to do. So both campaigns are going to rely heavily on their online presence and how they can reach people that way. Again, if your whole campaign is now based around being online, you really should have a platform that caters to younger voters, because those are the ones who are seeing all of this stuff play out online.
True. Do you plan on running for political position in the near future?
I did run once for our local Democratic committee, which is basically every throughout the county. There's districts and wards, and there is a Democratic man and a Democratic woman who represent each one of those. So I did run for my local election. I did not win. I was 10 votes short.
Oh, wow.
But
That's so close.
it was close. It was close. But actually, my wife did also run for that position, and she did win her position. So she does represent our ward and district to the local Erie County Democratic Party. I may run again. So we'll see how it goes. But I don't have any larger political aspirations beyond that.
What's your wife's name again?
Her name is Lourdes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What drew you to the Democratic Party?
Really, I believe the part of the Democratic Party that I align with the most is I think our government should support its people. I think the decisions that the government should make are the ones that are in the best interest of its people, not necessarily of its corporations or of its big businesses or or of its most wealthy population. It should just be for the average American citizen just trying, to get through everyday life. And I feel a lot of times when those decisions happen, you can see the differences in both parties. So if something comes up and they say this bill or this law or this, whatever it may be, on one hand, it'll help people. On the other hand, it would help business. I think the government should always tend to fall to help the average person, and because I believe that that's where our country actually succeeds the most, is when people are successful, not necessarily when the stock market is successful or when large corporations have, get bigger tax breaks. It's when we help the American citizen and the average person get ahead in life. That's really when our country grows, and when the economy grows and everything grows, follows that. Yeah. And usually those decisions that are made tend to fall towards the Democratic Party. They usually make those types of decisions.
Well, then, do you feel that there are any gaps in the platform of the Democratic Party, and how would you fill them in?
Well, that's a big question. So one of the major gaps that I always think that the Democratic Party can do better at is I don't know. I think the Democratic Party can do a lot better in challenging a lot of the things that are happening currently with our current administration, especially around immigration, social justice issues, healthcare. I think there can be a real improvement to a lot of people's lives pushing for issues like Medicare for all, really expanding, benefits, again, whether it's Social Security or Medicare or a lot of the things that benefit just average Americans. I think the party can really fight for a lot of those things. Some of the things around like social justice, like legalizing marijuana, and really trying to increase funding for public education, because a lot of the issues I think that the country faces really stem from the lack of access to high quality education. We find that the more people can, have a better education, get a better start in life, I think the better off we are.
Okay. And about Christine Nimbus, what makes her the right person to replace Mike Kelly?
So I think as far as Christy and her campaign go, I think there's been a lot of things around Mike Kelly that have been difficult for a lot of people. He, besides just his demeanor, the way that he is not always involved with his constituents. He is very hard to get a hold of. He's not always willing to be open and talk to. He's had some issues dealing with race, and he's said some things that have been, you can classify as offensive. But I think Christie's best aspect is she comes from, a typical background. She was a teacher. She's a single mother. She can relate to a lot of people, and again, relating to people really helps inform your decisions when you're talking about laws being passed, in the country. You can come from a place of privilege. Again, Mike Kelly is a business owner. He's successful, and that's fine. But he may say things from a place of privilege that a lot of people don't, and I think Christy is a little more down to earth, and she can really understand a lot of the things that people deal with on a daily basis.
Okay. What would you encourage other young persons who are interested in making a difference in the community to go about it?
So I think the best thing is to really really think about where your passions lie in the world. Figure out, don't figure out what you want to do, but figure out what you want to change. Figure out what part of the world or what part of your life you find needs the most change, and then find a group that fits that. So a lot of our members are part of several different groups. There's the Green New Deal Coalition, there's Empower Erie, there's Erie County United, French Creek Indivisible, the Erie DSA, which is the Democratic Socialists of America. There's a lot of groups who are trying to really just make a change. And if your passions lie with the environment, then try to find a group that's dealing with those things. If it's social justice, then try to find a group that deals with that. There is no one big blanket group that you can join that's gonna really attack all of these things. The Young Dems sometimes feels like that, like we're all of our members are part of all of these other organizations, and then we kind of come together in this group and we share all those ideas, which really makes it great. But if you really want to be a part of an active group, find something that really drives your passion, and then look for those groups, because they're out there, and you should be able to find one.
Do you have a list organization?
Yeah, we can give you. Those are the ones that I can at least think of that I know our members are a part of.
Uh-huh.
But I'm sure there's a lot more, and they may not even be official groups. You know, they could just be, Facebook groups, or they can just be groups of your friends from school, or a club in your university, or whatever it may be. But the best way to be involved is to find out what you're passionate about, and then find other people who are like you. And if that group doesn't exist, then create it.
Yeah.
There's no reason that you can't create your own group, and really sort of kickstart something that could really change something.
Okay, well that's it. It was really a pleasure meeting you. Like I learned
Thank you.
so much, and I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.